This is the Andres Segovia Show.
And welcome to the Andres Segovia Show, everyone. I am yours truly, Andres Segovia. In this episode of Real Estate 101, we will be talking about the residential listing agreement. So if you're looking to sell, this is the episode for you as to what kind of documents you can expect at the onset, generally speaking, if you're going to sell here in California. Before diving into this, though, as I mentioned before, my show is not sponsored. So anyone that I'm highlighting here are small businesses in the area that I want to give attention to that could use your help during this time. Some of them are upstarts, other ones have been around. Some of them did face hard times during COVID, but also because I know them too, and I want to help them any way that I can. I support with my wallet, but this time I want to give them a shout out. So today's shout out is to Aruka. Aruka is a new mom and pop company that just started up, and they currently are only doing services on what you would call farmers markets. So if you're in the high desert or find yourself around the upland area, which is, I guess you could say, west of LA County, east of LA County and west of Ontario, that's an area where you can find Aruka located in. You can follow them at their Instagram at Aruka_restoring faith. Now, what do they have? What do they do? So I hope I pronounced this one right. I had to pull this one up because I'm not used to this sort of thing, but apparently my wife is a fan of these things. So handmade macrames. I hope I said that right. So yes, these are handmade macrames and also handcrafted soaps. They're made with all 100% organic ingredients and stuff. This is the kind of stuff that you can find that they sell, and for now only available at these farmers markets. So again, if you find yourself around the high desert or even upland and coming soon to other places, I'm sure you can follow them on their Instagram so you can find out where they are near you. I was with them just a few days ago as of this recording to pick up a Father's Day gift and birthday gift for my brother because his birthday actually lands on Father's Day on my country's native holiday. So yay for my father, or bad depending on if he's a good son or not. No, I'm kidding. But I'm just saying that I ended up getting a couple of these organic soaps, also a facial soap scrub, and also a beard oil, which my brother turned out to be a very big fan of. So just letting you know about those things. These are available. Please follow and help support my friends at Aruka_restoring faith. It's Aruka's Hebrew for restoration. So check that out for yourselves. And thank you for supporting your small local businesses near you. Okay, let's dive into the residential listing agreement. Just like a lot of the agreements that I've been going over on this Real Estate 101 course with you, when we say agreement, it's a compilation of different disclosures that come together. But generally speaking, this is the one that you as a seller may find yourself signing when you're looking to sell your property. Whether it's a commercial or whether it's a multi-unit that's over 4 units, that's a different agreement. This one is residential, which applies to single family or 2 units, 3 units, or even 4 units. That's considered residential. So this applies the same way to any of them. Whether they're occupied by you or occupied by someone you're renting out to, it's all the same. This is the residential listing agreement, which per all the other documents, do not be afraid to sign. This is a must, honestly. You cannot list a property without this one. So you as a seller trying to forego some signing, want to do everything as an oral contract, not going to happen. This is the way to do it. And this one is going to stipulate as many details as possible of what access and power you are giving to your listing agent. And when we say listing agent, same thing applies. That the listing agent might not be the managing broker of that office, which in those cases required also the signature on that agreement of the managing broker, the one that supervises and supersedes everything. Okay, so there's a chain of command that needs to be followed there too. But the agent is there acting on behalf of the brokerage under their own authority, hence the contract that they sign with the brokerage. So anyway, what's included with the listing agreement besides the part that says I'm selling my house? Well, there's a disclosure regarding the real estate agency relationship. That's basically setting up that, hey, we're going to work together. And as a brokerage that you're signing with, the brokerage can be what is called a dual agency. There's some real estate agencies, I rarely ever found these in my area, but they do exist, that only deal with one party or the other. What do I mean? There's some agencies that are built just to work with buyers, just as there are some agencies that only work with sellers. So the disclosure of real estate agency relationships is setting up to announce that this brokerage could be working with you as the seller, but they also have agents that work with buyers. The reason that's important is because maybe some of those buyers might be interested in your property. So thereby the brokerage is representing both, even though there's two different agents, they're all reporting to the same brokerage. See? Okay, which lends to the next part, the possible representation of more than one buyer or seller, because those other said agents, or even the agent you're working directly, might have other sellers too, because they have multiple listings, as the so goes. Or also, if the agent that you're hiring as your listing agent, when that's allowed to, which we'll get to in a moment, an open house, they might also be picking up one of those buyers on this open house to buy your property. So there's a possible representation of the listing agent also being the buyer's agent. So that's what those documents and disclosures are there to set up. And I'll expand on it in a little bit to give you some peace of mind that you have a concern about that, which some people do, some people don't, but fair game, we'll get to that. Then there's the wire fraud electronic transfer advisory, especially now during COVID. Just about everything's electronic, which I actually been waiting for that, because it makes things considerably more convenient. But what's very important is that we're also transferring funds. So this is an advisory to let you know that electronic means are being utilized, and now more than ever, to wire funds. And we're talking about large amount of funds in this case. So you want to be very careful that your agent is informing you all along the way when you should be anticipating a link or communication from a party that requires a wire from you, for example. And that's very important, that if you receive something and you think, oh yeah, I'll pay them now. But what if your agent didn't tell you because they didn't know this was coming their way? You want to make sure that, hey, is this correct? Is this something right? Is this part of your office of communication, or is this part of the transaction? You're going to want to know. So the advisory is to tell you, be aware of such things, confirm and verify, because of course there's a lot of fraud out there. And as soon as we all went into lockdown, oh my goodness, the sharks were waiting for this opportunity. But not to be concerned, there are safeguards in place. Just trust but verify. 4, seller's advisory. So this other one is basically the guidelines for you, the seller, on what your obligations are and what you're not obligated to disclose in certain situations, depending on how involved you are with the property, for example. If it's your home that you're selling, you lived on, you have a duty to disclose what you know of the property. No one's assuming you're a contractor. No one's assuming you're an engineer. That's not for you to disclose, because if you don't know it, you don't know it. But it's up to you to know. It's like, yeah, man, I never fixed that plumbing and I have issues with it. You have a duty to disclose these things, and that stuff will come up in the home inspection anyway. But what you don't know, you don't know. Therefore, you are not liable to disclose that. So that's what the seller's advisory is. It gives you a guideline and breakdown of things, what's expected or not expected of you. Things do change depending on the kind of role you have as a seller in properties, for example, that you're selling for someone that is mentally incapacitated or has been deceased, and you become responsible for that property. Things change in that respect. I'm not getting into that conversation in this one. That will be for another episode of 101 because it merits its own conversation, but just wanted to let you know about that. And because there's a lot of information being exchanged here between multiple parties, that's why there's the California Consumer Privacy Act advisory as to how your information is being used or not used, for you to be aware of that. Similar to what just about anywhere else that basically is taking your personal information needs to disclose to you. Now, specifically speaking, before we enter to the no open houses stuff, the listing agreement itself is where we break down. Let's say you're dealing with me, which you should. Let's say you're dealing with me. That's where we break down what you're agreeing to in terms of the going price for the property. What are we offering it to the public for? Based after doing a lot of research together, and we find a price that we believe can be worked with and still leaving room for negotiate, whatever. We've reached that number. That's the one we put into the contract. We're putting into the contract how long we're going to be working together, because this is an exclusive agreement. So you're agreeing with me that, or hiring me, that I'm going to be working with you for a specified amount of time. So it's in my interest to get that property marketed and sold within that time frame, because that's what I have to put in for the work effort and to make sure that I can collect at the very end of it. Otherwise, if I don't sell your property and time expires, you owe me nothing. So who's left losing out here? Obviously the agent, after putting in so much work. But also, depending, we don't want the seller to hurt, because what if the agent did a shoddy job and lost out on the good market? Then something could happen to the agent too. So all these things are for both parties to understand what involvement either one has in the situation, because it's a relationship. It's not a one-way street, a relationship, and everybody needs to be on board with this. So if both of you are intending, like the seller and the agent are agreeing to this, it's 100% on both sides, because cooperation is key. So also in that, you can also specify that, hey, Andres, I don't want you to double end this deal. It's happened before where the sellers would say, I don't want you double lending it. You're representing my interest and my interest alone. So I want you to get me to, you want you to be 100% on my side. So let someone else bring the buyer. It happens. Yes. And I have no problem with it. It's okay, because my interest is to the seller to get their property sold as quickly as possible. And that's what it all comes down to. You can do that. You can specify that. And most importantly, the one that you all want to know about, the commission breakdown is negotiated, not fixed. It's negotiated with you, the seller, and the agent. And that's where it goes down in the document. Can it be amended? Up to both of you. That's why everything has to be in writing. You don't pay anything to the agent up front, as it was with other transactions, especially when I went over the buyer side of things. Nothing is given to the agent, not even after escrow closes, because it goes to the brokerage, and then the brokerage disperses the funds, which eventually gets to the agent. So nothing is given to them up front. Just the FYI. Now, I need to talk about this one, because obviously you're watching this and you're wondering what changes, especially here in California, are due to COVID-19. And as you can see, no open houses. As of this recording, we're still not permitted to do open houses. That does not mean there are no showings. Okay. Now, I've mentioned this before. If you a regular listener to my show, that vacant properties have moved a lot faster than occupied properties. That is because it's a lot easier to coordinate and clean. We did have best practices guidelines in place, but there were some confusion from the state level, municipality levels, even the county levels, as to what's essential and what's not essential. So in that confusion, some properties have stayed on the market a lot longer than they should have, and then got scooped up. Other ones got moved a lot faster because people were confused and just wanted to get things over with. So in those situations, I can tell you that as of right now, there are still no open houses permitted in California, and we're honestly not sure if that ever might become a thing again. So while there are no open houses, we got to talk about what is considered the best practices guidelines. This is the sample form, which has now become a legal document for us California Real Estate Association realtors. And this is basically a prevention plan, and also how to conduct showings, not open houses, showings, and the protocols that must be dealt with in between showings, whether the property is occupied or unoccupied. So basically, this gives a rundown of what is expected and basically a limitation. And these are the general guidelines as stipulated here. Check your city or county for more restrictive local showings or rules, because for the showings now, as agents, we have to make sure the property is vacated. So if it's occupied, make sure that they're not present when the buyers arrive. And when the buyers arrive, it has to be their agent with the buyer. No more than probably one other person, which technically is usually the pair involved as the primary buyers. So in those instances, the buying party has to be as small as possible to minimize the amount of contact they'll have with items in the property, and to better control and manage, and of course, what is considered contact tracing. Before any of them can show up, things have to be delivered electronically. So there's a communication between agents that we have to tell them the guidelines, even though they might already know. We have to remind them of said guidelines, and they all have to disclose to the seller's agent that they will comply, and advise if anybody is ill, they will not show up, because that needs to be understood, that no one sick can show up. Just like any other business pulls up a sign that says if you're sick, do not enter. Same thing here, because even though it's your personal residence that you're selling, for example, you're opening up for business, so to speak, because you're letting prospect clients in. So as an agent, it's our responsibility to weed out those that shouldn't be arriving. for which a lot of this that's restrictive because we're trying to utilize virtual tours as much as possible. It isn't anything really new, because before you were, and some people still do, sell properties that are subject to inspection. In other words, the buyer had not seen it, but the property seller wants to weed out those that just arrive to see, or they might have the concerns that some people just want to see what's inside the house and possible break-in later, because unfortunately that has happened. So what they will do is accept offers that are subject to inspection. That means the buyer is submitting an offer even though they haven't seen the property, but they can change their mind subject to the inspection. So if they arrive like, hey, this does not match the virtual tours, I don't want this, I'm out of here, they have their legal right to back out of that deal because it was subject to inspection. Just that now, during time of coronavirus, then it's basically the same thing. It's just that now it's applied more in general than it was like that one property that would show up that when you're looking through comparative market analysis. But now there's more. Along the lines of this best practices guidelines is including the disinfecting and the cleaning of the property and the availability of sanitation products, which can be a little cumbersome because, as some of you know, some of this stuff can already be sold out every time you're trying to go for it. But in this, it's discussed who becomes responsible to provide it, not necessarily pay for it. That's something that has to be discussed between the agent and the seller. And also the rules for every visitor, that they should be, in some cases, I've seen it, they have to wear booties, like covers for their shoes, they have to wear gloves, they have to wear masks. When they come in, try not to touch. There's hand sanitizers and all that. It might sound like super exaggerated, but that's one of the things that some places have required in order to show the house for those that are serious buyers. And of course, the rules for sellers, that once the buyers are gone, that the property needs to be properly disinfected before the next showing, which is why they're done on an appointment basis. But as you can see, it's still possible to sell your house. A little bit more inconvenient, but it is still possible to sell the house. And for those that have followed my show enough would know that the vacant properties have been scooped up a heck of a lot faster, because it's so much easier to control that than it would be someone occupying the property, whether it's the primary owner or if it's a tenant, because there's people living there and they cannot be there when the buyers show up per social distancing guidelines for the state. So depending on where you are, it could be a little easier or it could be more restrictive to show your property, but just understand that there are steps to show the property that both sides should comply by, and should give you some peace of mind that we're all in this together and we want to consummate the transaction properly. So it's with that I basically leave it there. So if you have any more questions, because this is just a general overview of everything, you want to get to the nitty-gritty of things, that's where you can sit down and talk to me, so we can have this conversation about the seriousness of certain things, what it might apply to for your local region, and of course, what's the market looking like for your local region. So here's my information, my contact information. You can find more resources at my real estate website, www.segoviares.com, and you can reach me by those channels. And of course, like, share, subscribe, stay in the know, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a notification here. And as always, also follow my podcast in any of the podcast directory catchers that are below, and you'll be in the know. And of course, as always, I'll see you on the next one.